Good morning and welcome again to the Veterans Forum. Today is the 25th of May, 2010. Time seems to be zipping right by. Today we have the pleasure of having an interview with another one of the guys and gals who did his or her thing. I'll introduce him by name quickly and then we'll take the show on the road. But bear with us if you will. This will be a good one. Thank you. Kevin, would you please tell us your name and spell your last name for the record?
Kevin Mitts, M-I-T-T-S.
Good, like in baseball.
That's correct.
Okay. Now, where do you currently live?
I live in Lenox on Dunmore Court.
Okay. Now, what was your branch of service and your highest rank upon discharge or whatever?
I was in the Navy, United States Navy, and I was a commander when I was discharged.
Okay. When?
In 2001.
Okay. Now, I understand I'm jumping ahead, but you're contemplating right now maybe signing back for the reserve.
That's right. I have 12 years active. But 4 additional years that don't count toward retirement. So if I hit 20 with my 12, I jump to 24, and it seems maybe too good to pass up. So I'm considering signing back up for the reserves as a
Sounds
sergeant.
like Scotch mathematics. No matter what
Right.
you do, you can't help but win.
Right. 8
great.
more years, basically.
I
would
wish
give
you
me
well.
20.
Okay,
Thank
fine.
you. Yeah.
20 to 24 in one bout. That's great.
Right.
Okay.
That's
now,
right.
this is very brief, but let's kind of build a little history, like starting, if you will. Where were you born? When? And your early life before you started getting into the serious things are called.
I was born in Las Vegas, and I was born at my father's mother's house when he was deployed in the Navy, when he was on Westpac. My mother was staying with his mother, and was born there. My father was a career naval officer. He was a Mustang. He started out as a storekeeper or supply.
Okay, Cross Keys.
That's correct. And then he got his commission and was a supply corps officer, a limited duty officer, which I think was mandatory in those days if you didn't have a college degree that you had to be LDO, but I'm not sure. But nonetheless, he was an LDO and did his 25 years. He retired in 1974 as an 05 as a commander. And we grew up, I was a Navy brat. We moved all over, mainly East
Here,
Coast.
there, and elsewhere. Okay.
Exactly.
Now, how was it growing up, though, when you went from base to base? When, if you will, your dad was enlisted, and what sort of quarters did you have versus what happens once he got his commission? Was there a marked change, and how did you react to it?
Well, he was commissioned by the time I was born.
Oh,
so
okay.
he was a junior. I think maybe a junior grade when I was born. But nonetheless, even the officers' quarters for junior officers were somewhat austere in those days. We did live on base in several different locations, but he would try to transition to live off base, just because the housing was maybe a little bit better. Mainly the places where I remember living on base were Norfolk, where he was at the Staff College, and in Newport, Rhode Island, where the housing where we lived is still standing today. But the transitions were normal. I grew up with it, and we moved frequently, and that was just what you did. You were there for every couple of years, and you made your friends, and then you just moved. Right.
Now, so we can get some kind of chronology. When did this start? When were you born, for example?
1961.
In Reno.
In Nevada, Las Vegas. Right, the jackpot, right?
Yeah.
And then from there, it was East Coast. My father was stationed in Philadelphia at the Naval Shipyard there. There was a large supply center there, and he was there for the first 5 years of my life. And then down to Norfolk, Virginia, where he was stationed aboard a couple of destroyer tenders. And then up to Newport, Rhode Island, where they also had a bunch of destroyers at that time. Back down to Philadelphia, and then finally retiring out to San Diego.
Okay, that takes care of your dad. Now, what about you? What do you, as far as schooling, high school, prep school,
high
med
school,
and so
in
on?
San Diego, and went off to college. I was the youngest of 4. I have 2 older brothers and a sister.
Were they any of them in the service?
No, not interested. In fact, I thought that I would not be interested either. I was kind of a surfer, in San Diego, and
Beach boy?
a little bit of beach boy and a little bit of trouble, and was fortunate enough that I went to college 800 miles away from San Diego and got away from that scene, and did well in college and was applying to medical schools. And I had an uncle who was a career civil service. He was a State Department retiree who was dying of throat cancer, and he told me about this program at Bethesda. It's called the Uniformed Services University, and I had all my applications into the medical schools. And he told me about this program, and I said, I'm really not into the Navy thing. He said, you at least have to go look at it.
Read it, yeah.
And I really said, I'm not interested. And he really lost it with me. And out of respect for my uncle, I went and I looked at the university, and it became my top choice.
Okay.
And it's the Uniformed Services University, which is still in existence. It's established in 1973. It's Army, Navy, and Air Force Medical School.
Where is it located?
It's in Bethesda.
Bethesda, okay.
It's behind the Naval Medical Center in Bethesda. And it's a very large campus. And when you sign up, if you're accepted, if you're lucky enough to get accepted, which I was, you're commissioned as an 01.
Now, what is an 01?
An ensign in the Navy.
Oh, okay.
Or a second lieutenant in the Army or the Air Force. And they also have Public Health Service, which was an ensign. And you're an ensign for 4 years, and you go through regular medical school, except during the summers you do cruises. It's almost like a military academy for doctors.
Okay.
And then you graduate as an 03, so I graduated as a lieutenant in the Navy after 4 years of medical school. And then you have a commitment.
Okay, payback.
A large payback.
Okay.
And the payback is 7 plus 3 now, so it's 7 active and 3 reserve now.
Those are years, not days.
Years,
Years,
and training does not count. So if you do internship and residency, those don't count for payback. So they get you for a pretty long time, which is why I was in for so long. But really no regrets. It was just great training.
Now, is it any different, if you will, for regular medical school versus whatever the military imposed upon you to make any other requirements?
The only differences were really the military training that you did. We did a lot of field medical training, but the requirements are the same. We took the same board examinations. We trained side by side in programs with George Washington and Georgetown students, and we went to their hospitals, they came to our hospitals. So it was a very well-established medical training program. And the advantages were, as a senior in medical school, you could travel. You could go to military installations anywhere in the world if you could arrange an internship. And it afforded the opportunity to see and train and learn different things, tropical medicine and things of that sort.
Now, how did you come to make your decision as to your specialty or MOS, if you will? Or did you not have one? You were just a GP? Or?
I was completely influenced by friends. And I had some friends who were interested in orthopedic surgery, and it seemed like way too much work to me. I wanted to go into primary care specialty, and it just seemed like the surgery thing was a little too intense. And I did some rotations in as a third-year medical student, and just found that my first rotation was orthopedic rotation. I did a knee replacement with the surgeon, and I was smitten.
It was magic.
Yes, right.
Okay.
And from that point on, I decided I wanted to do orthopedic surgery.
Where did you develop, if you will, the hands and the touch for that? Something prior, some other training
No.
or schooling, or just a natural
No, I thought
gift?
I was going to pass out my first time in the OR.
Oh.
But I was in the operating room the very first time was at Andrews Air Force Base. It was on a rotation, an orthopedic surgery rotation there. And it was a young lieutenant commander who just came in out of a civilian training program, and he was very ego and gung-ho and just said, wow, look at this great stuff we do.
Yippee.
And loved it. And then you develop your skill as you go, and you continue to develop as a surgeon.
You're always literally in training, because there's always tomorrow there's going to be the new
right.
something or other.
You really hit your stride, I think, after the first 5 to 8 years of practice.
In your tenure, did you ever end up or have to be required or want to be an instructor or a teacher, an adjunct professor of something, some kind, to spread your knowledge?
Yes, I was. I was an adjunct. I still am an adjunct professor at the Uniformed Services University of the Health Sciences, which is the military medical school, as well as at the University of Massachusetts. In the Navy, I did some teaching at the Naval Medical Center in San Diego. I would have medical students rotate through the Okinawa program when I was stationed in Okinawa for 3 years. And then we would have clerks come through in Newport right before I got out.
Okay.
So I have done some teaching of medical students and interns.
How'd you like it?
Love it. Love to teach. Love to teach. We teach here too. We teach interns and junior residents here at Berkshire Medical Center. And I intern, or I mentor, if you will, high school students that come and spend some time with me. It's great. I'd love to teach.
Do you ever get that feeling that you're struggling and struggling, but all of a sudden you say or do some one thing and you can almost see the lights go on?
Yes.
That to me, well, I
surgery is a maze, basically, and sometimes you're in the middle, and some things, unpredictable things are encountered. Mm-hmm. And surgery is the goal of getting into trouble and then knowing how to get out, and that's how you know that you're maturing, is that you're in and something unexpected may happen, But you know, you keep your cool, and you know that there's a way out, and you find a way out. That is obviously to the benefit of the patient. So.
Yeah.
But
They don't
unexpected
have
things happen, just like any other profession or any other.
But it's a
interaction.
wonderful feeling, though. I'm not the medical type, but I did some 34, 35 years trying to teach, and I say trying because you never know.
Right.
But once in a while, you could just see that little light go on, and it
Right.
made the day.
Right.
It made the day.
Right.
Now, in orthopedics, is there any time requirements with respect to how your rotation got from, if you will, a doctor to a specialist and then to a finite specialist? Is there a progression that you've got to follow?
The Navy, there is, and it's different for each service, and at that particular time, the needs of the Navy dictated what you did when you graduated medical school. All doctors, when they graduated, do an internship. And you have to do an internship before you can be even a general practitioner. I applied to go back to San Diego to do my internship, and I went to the Naval Medical Center in San Diego. My father still lived there. And after that, I had a plan. And my plan was, and I've told this to so many people, you know, in the military, you can do your time, or you can have a plan, and you can really take advantage of what the military has to offer.
You can plan
Right.
for it, right?
And if you plan ahead, and my father, I think, helped me with that. I'm sure that he did.
Okay.
But my plan was to do flights. I had a 7-year commitment, not including training. And my plan was to do flight surgeries for 3 years. So I was a U.S. Naval flight surgeon. And then my last 4 years I would do after I did my orthopedic training. And that's the way it worked for me. And doing the flight surgery, which is an operational medical tour, I was a doctor assigned to a helicopter squadron after going to flight school and flight training myself. Doing that gave me credit, if you will, or made me a better candidate in the eyes of the residency.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Because it's a maturing duty, if you will.
Now, was any of these during combat, or were you lucky not to have to go to combat? I'm being nosy.
I was officially. I mean, we were being shot at, and we were in official combat theaters, but I was not in the war, the first Desert Storm. I was lucky that I was at flight school during Desert Shield and during Desert Storm, which was a very short engagement.
Yeah.
I was actually on transitional leave between Pensacola and San Diego. So I think the day of the ground invasion, I was skiing in Taos, New Mexico.
Well, somebody had to do it.
Exactly, serving my country.
If
But,
you don't take care of yourself, you
right.
can't take care of anybody else.
Exactly. And so I transitioned, and I went to flight school at Pensacola after my internship. That was a 7-month program, and then was assigned to a helicopter squadron in Orange County, California, at the 3rd Marine Aircraft Wing. And the way that works is, as a doctor, you're assigned to the unit, and you are their doctor, and your primary duty is to take care of them. The benefit of being a U.S. Naval flight surgeon is that you can fly. I could fly second in command in an aircraft. I couldn't be the aircraft commander, but I could be a co-pilot.
Oh, were you trained in, if you will, piloting?
Yes, I went to primary flight training, which you learn how to fly a turboprop, if you will. You can go to helicopter training. I elected to fly the fixed wing. And then the squadron is responsible for training you to fly their aircraft. And it really is a CO dependent. You know, it depends how much the commanding officer likes you, how important he thinks it is for the flight surgeon to fly.
Yeah, will we miss you if he crashes?
Right. How many hours he wants to give you.
Yeah.
Because you're taking hours from other people if you're flying. And I was very lucky. The skipper took me out and personally trained me how to fly these helicopters. And,
Good. Did you enjoy it?
I loved it.
How about the first time?
Very
you
hard.
hovered?
Very, very
Everything's
hard.
going all the
Oh,
same?
just everywhere, yeah. Because it's, you know, the stick here and the collective there, and it's very
Hope it
difficult.
keeps going up there, too.
It's easy when you're going forward, but hovering can be kind of challenging.
No, that's another whole can of worms. I'd love to go there, but we can't. Now, in addition, let's say you've been in the Navy, you were assigned to a Marine outfit, so that about covers the swath of did you have to do any combat work with the Army or any?
Not with the Army, but no.
Or in cooperation with, I guess.
Well, we were in Operation Restore Hope in Somalia, and the way that it worked is the helicopters were flown over to the airport at Mogadishu, and we spent some time there at the airport, and then established an air base that was basically a transitional air base between Mogadishu and Kenya. We went out to an old bombed-out Russian airfield and established an air base there with the Air Force. And the Air Force took care of the landing strip and the approach control and air traffic control and all that. And the Marines flew in and out of the airbase with C-130s and helicopters. Very interesting.
Quite an interesting landing.
Very interesting. And I was the doctor. I had 8 corpsmen and about 1,500 Marines that I took care of. And we had a little tent city there. And it was really a great experience.
Did you, this is a term I'm hearing more and more, but did you do any, quote, civilian humane medical work, supplies
yes.
to a lot of local people?
Yes.
How'd you
Mainly looking at people and reassuring people because the communication was very poor and the supplies were extremely limited. We were there very early and really had supplies in Foot Lockers. We had gauze and tape and splinting. We had very few medications and drugs. We had Benadryl and Tylenol, because we were really there. We packed up and left very quickly and just took what we can get our hands on.
Now, did you do your work through an interpreter as far as the communication goes?
Yes.
Now, how would the people react to you?
Well, when they found out you were a doctor, they would, it was a little bit overwhelming, right?
Gives you the best cow in the herd?
Well, they would bring up all of their friends and they'd show me various rashes and sores that these people had. And I have some pictures that I omitted that I did not bring that I should have because it was really very interesting. But they were very nice people. They were hired early on to clean the base by the Marines. And their interest really was preservation. They needed food and water. And we actually ended up, having camp security because every once in a while there would be mortar rounds that would be fired into the camp or, shots would be fired overhead at night. But they really wanted to come in and get food. And they would go through our dump, and take MREs. And we caught some taking cases of meals ready to eat, and walking off the base with them. And so we had to establish security just to prevent theft by the locals.
But you did the job, though.
Right.
Okay, hey, that's great. Right. Where else would you like to go? Now, I've tried to read here, you've gone just about anywhere and everywhere, San Diego, Bethesda, Okinawa, Korea, Newport, El Toro. Any good memories of those different places that you'd like to share with us?
Well, Okinawa was a great place. And I deployed twice to Okinawa, once with the Marines for 6 months. Marines do these Westpaks where they either go aboard a ship or they go somewhere.
FMF?
Yes.
Right.
I was FMF and Fleet Marine Force. And so we went to Okinawa for 6 months, deployed to Okinawa, and then trained from there. Went down to the Philippines and trained, went to Korea and trained. And so I was there 6 months with them. Came home, did my residency, and then was stationed at the Naval Hospital in Okinawa for 3 years with my family. I was married just before going to flight school. My wife was Mary Beth.
Okay.
Okay.
We have to get the women
in
here.
And so my first 6-month deployment, we were without children, and Mary Beth stayed in Orange County, and I went to Japan for 6 months, and I came home. And I might add that she survived a very large earthquake in my absence, with several frantic calls from Okinawa and messages. And she was an East Coaster, so she wasn't used to the ground moving, Anyway. There was that, and then came home, did my residency training, had my first child, Maggie, in residency, second child, Elizabeth, in residency. Then we moved to Okinawa. While Mary Beth was pregnant with our third child, she had the third, Kate was born in Okinawa at the Naval
dual
Hospital.
Citizenship down, huh?
She has a consulate birth certificate. Okay. It's very nice. She was born in Chatan-cho, Okinawa. And I served for 3 years there as an orthopedic surgeon. I was also the department head. I was the director of surgical services. I was on the executive committee there.
Kind of a busy boy, huh?
Well, that's kind of where I got some of my leadership training. The Navy is very big in leadership.
I think you do a good job.
If you want to get promoted, and you have to participate. Mm-hmm. And they want their naval officers, and especially their doctors, to participate and to help.
You have to be a Type A no matter what anyway, don't you?
Right. To go to medical school?
Yeah, anybody.
Yeah, I think
you've got to have it. I know I can do it no matter what.
Right. But Okinawa was a great place to live. Great place to live. The Japanese people were wonderful. The local Okinawans, which are distinct from the Japanese. The Ryukyuan people were wonderful. And it's very picturesque, as you know.
Well, when I left it was not picturesque back in 46.
It was a little burned out.
A little burned out, a little smelly, desperate, desolate, scary, and lonely. But outside, that was a great place to be.
From
similar, what you tell me, it's
very similar to Honolulu today.
Oh.
You fly into Naha, And Naha is a city of probably 1 million people, and skyscrapers and resorts.
Skyscrapers?
And resorts. Maybe not sky, maybe, but 20, 30-story buildings.
Okay, high-rise
Right,
compared to the
high-rises,
one-level
right.
shack.
Right. And so big city in the south, another large city in the north called Nago, and then coastline in between, which is beautiful. It's like Hawaii, and this, the beautiful coral reefs and beaches and resorts everywhere. The Japanese vacation there.
Okay, that must be tourists to keep, because forget me, but what would be the economy to support the people living there? Just tourism, or do they have
Tourism,
industry?
agriculture. It's the northern end of the island is a lot of pineapples.
Oh,
They grow
okay,
a lot
like
of pineapples,
Hawaii.
and there's also sugar cane grown in Okinawa.
So good to know.
Yeah.
That someday I may go back and take a look at
And
it.
it's largely rural, so there's a lot of, we would vacate. There's a resort on the upper end of the island. It's an Air Force resort, and we would go there for weekends or take
On
a
an hour-and-hour basis?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And take the kids, and the beaches were nice, and you could ride your bikes on country roads, and it was just very pleasant. Very
Did
nice
you feel
place to live.
safe?
Felt very safe. Really very safe. Unlike Korea. When you went off base in Korea, you never felt perfectly comfortable.
Okay, I was going to get to that, but
Yeah, a little bit different.
Lead into one to the other so we get a feel
Right.
for
And
them.
the people in Okinawa were very friendly. You could walk into a shop or into a restaurant, you always felt welcome. And you didn't have that sense, if you were off base alone in
Yeah.
Korea, you didn't feel
Keep
in
looking over
danger,
your
but
shoulder.
people just
Yeah.
didn't like you as
On a-
much, and
on-
they weren't as friendly, a little more on edge, I think, in Korea than in Okinawa.
Anything special happened in Korea? Any things you had to do, or special operational stuff?
No, just there for training. They
Oh.
have some ranges, and we were at Osan Air Base, and we trained at Osan Air Base, but we stayed at a small Camp Humphreys, which is kind of out in the middle of nowhere.
Okay, now, if you will, to expand a bit, training, what does it involve? What are you training to do or training for?
I was the doctor, and they're taking care of the pilots were training. It was all about mission readiness and training. They have special ranges that they use for nighttime training, night vision goggle training, for aerial refueling, for troop transport, for lifting loads and guns. These helicopters that I flew had a payload of 75,000 pounds. So inside could fit 2 Jeeps and 12 Marines or 55 Marines. And they could lift a howitzer or could lift another helicopter. So they
Like a
practiced
piggyback?
these operations all the
Okay.
time. And they were basically cargo and troop transport helicopters. Huge. Rotor spans 90 feet.
Just keep ducking.
Unbelievable. Yeah.
Okay.
Very, very powerful. We would take off out of parade grounds and blow the bleachers over. That's
Oh.
how strong the rotor wash was from these things. Really
That's
amazing.
weird.
Yeah.
Okay. So you've been here, and have you done any work, if you will, on the East Coast? You got a Toro and all those places, and flight surgeon, aircraft. Explain this. This is, to me, very interesting. I can't read your writing. I'm sorry to say it, but okay.
I was a naval flight surgeon with the 3rd Marine Aircraft Wing, and I was assigned to, it was HMH 466 is the name of the unit that I was assigned to. I was their flight surgeon. I think probably, I should probably touch on because I think it's interesting.
Yeah,
even though it was
amen.
very, very challenging, was we had some issues when we were deployed in the early 90s with our commanding officer. He was a very hard charger, but also a very heavy drinker. And
I mean, heavyweight or heavy?
he drank a lot, and
Oh.
he drank too much, and maybe came close to violating these bottle to throttle rules. And I came home from Korea, and he would just kind of push a little too hard, would push people to do things they weren't comfortable doing mission-wise, flying in conditions that maybe they shouldn't be flying, and maybe staying out a little too late and flying a little too early the next morning. But several incidents had happened. We were flying home, and one of the pilots was forced to fly in conditions that he was not happy with, but he was with the skipper. And they came out of a cloud bank, and there was an island right in front of them in the South Pacific. They were flying from Korea to Okinawa, and almost hit the trees and had to fly up. And a weaker helicopter would not have been able to do it, but these helicopters are very, very strong. They got back to the airbase, and there were leaves in the bottom of the helicopter where they had brushed the trees.
That's touch and go.
Right. So I came home from Korea a few days later, and one of the Marines came up and said, the XO wants to see you in his room. I thought, oh God, what did I do? I must have done something. Maybe that
Spare
night
me.
at Osan, So I went back, and it was the XO and the maintenance officer and the admin officer and everybody was there, and they said, we're really scared. You know, we're really worried, and we
Can
need
you
you
ground
to
him?
we need you to do something.
Yeah.
So I did. I grounded him, and then it turned out to be somewhat of an ugly struggle between me and the skipper and the commanding general of the Marine Air Group.
Ooh.
And because the commanding general was kind of a friend of the skipper's and felt that I really wasn't qualified to do that.
Yeah.
And
Overstepping
so
your bounds.
well, I had some friends in higher places, and I sent him, for evaluations by them, and they concurred, and he was grounded, and got the proper rehab that he needed, and ended up regaining his command.
Okay, so he did
It was,
come back.
he did come back. He came back to his command, and then moved on to higher commands after going through the military's rehab program.
Mm-hmm. Good.
So it turned out to be good, but a very, very stressful time. And of course, it was one of those things where you're all standing in line, and I, said something, and everybody else stepped back. So there's nobody else
I
there.
didn't volunteer; they
Right.
left.
Well, that's the doctor, and so because I'm a short timer, these guys
Yeah.
are there forever,
Oh.
and I have a 3-year stint, and so they do. That's part of that comes with the program.
Okay.
That's what
You'll
they
learn
want
the
you to do.
game, yeah.
Right, right, and you have to learn. They have to learn to be able to trust you, the officers and the pilots, and learn not to fear you, that you would ground them. So it's you do walk a little
You're
bit of
walking a
fine
very
line.
thin line.
Right,
Yeah.
you have to be one of the boys, and yet you have to be separate. So.
Yeah. But still, you had to have way back here. What's the best for everybody?
Right.
Buddies are
Safety.
great things and so forth. They
Right.
save your back. But
Right.
when it gets time to yes or no,
Right.
do you want to be with me or not?
Right. And while all this is going on back in Orange County, my wife is going to the movies and going out to dinner with his wife.
Oh,
so there's
buddy.
this extra
Oh, yeah.
dimension going on. It was very interesting.
Oh.
Very
Wow.
interesting.
Okay. Now, we're about halfway through the show, but I'd like to know if you have some certain things that kind of jump out in your time that are, in your words, in your own feeling, significant that have helped you make your progression. What did you do? What did you have to do? I mean, you've got all kinds of good stuff.
A lot
but
of good
How do you feel about it?
I came in very reluctantly and was worried about the whole thing. Coming in, I went to, they call it Officer Indoctrination School at Newport, Rhode Island in 1985. And I thought it would be a little more casual than it was. It turned out to be fairly rigorous, where you have to bounce the dime on your sheets, and you're scrubbing the floors with a toothbrush, and you're standing inspection every day. And that was not my ball of wax. That's not what I
was a hell
thought
of a
that I was signing
transition.
up
Yeah.
for. That was my transition from college into the military. And my first couple years in, I was very resistant. I didn't get into trouble, but I just did what I kind of had to do to get by, and did not enjoy it. Third, fourth year of medical school now, so I'm 3 years into the Navy. And we were active duty officers. We wore our uniforms to school every day, and stood inspections at medical school. Our summers, my first summer I went to survival school up in Maine. Second summer I spent on the amphib ship down in Carolina. So we were really, no kidding, military officers. The third year started to really get involved in the medicine, really enjoyed the medicine more, liked a lot of the clinical things that we were doing. And I think that kind of eased some of the Navy pressure, if you will. And it was really my third and fourth years in the Navy where I became a little bit more accepting and a little bit more, if I want something, I better start playing this game a little bit better.
Amen.
Right.
Amen.
And then I was fortunate after my orthopedic training out, so leaping forward beyond flight surgery. So, now 6, 7 years in, 8 years in, when I went to Okinawa as an orthopedic surgeon, I had a couple of very good mentors that were medical service corps officers. These were hospital administrators. And I was the department head of the orthopedics. We had 5 surgeons and probably 12 to 15 corpsmen
Are
in
you the
our
honcho?
department, and I was the department head. But this guy really spent a lot of time with me, mentoring me, and assigned me as the director of surgical services, and really kind of picked me for some leadership positions that I think have really helped me. And I've been his name was Captain John Centel. He was the XO of the hospital there. It's a pretty large hospital, about a 200-bed hospital. And groomed me, if you will, for leadership positions.
Good. He
And,
tested you.
Right. Exactly.
Tested you, right?
And when I was not interested in it at all.
No.
You know, I didn't think. And, you know,
Now,
went
do you
on
ever-
to then use those in civilian medicine.
Okay.
You know, as the director of the operating room committee here, as the president of the medical society, have some of the teaching positions.
No. You touched on something I would like you to explain right here with respect to your Surgeon of the Year or whatever you call it. Tell us about that. I think that's something that should not be overlooked.
The year that, when I was a flight surgeon with the Marines, I was, the year that I had the difficulty with the commanding officer, I was nominated for the Navy-wide Flight Surgeon of the Year. There were 16 FMF PAC, or Fleet Marine Force, flight surgeons in the Pacific, probably another 16 Marine flight surgeons Atlantic, and then probably 4 times that number Navy-wide in the Navy that weren't Marine. So about 100 flight surgeons, something like that in the Navy. And I was nominated as the Flight Surgeon of the Year because of some of the difficulties I had with the skipper, as well as, and how that was handled, as well as some accomplishments with regard to lectures and presentations at some meetings as a flight surgeon based upon our Somalia deployment and things of that sort. I was the lead medical officer, as I mentioned, for this group of 1,500 Marines, and that helped. And I was a finalist for the Navy-wide Flight Surgeon of the Year. It ended up going to a carrier guy. And we always felt second rate with the Marines anyway. The Marines always feel second rate.
Brown shoes.
Right,
anyway.
exactly. Right. It went to,
Okay.
it went to a carrier guy and, instead of a helicopter guy, because their planes are really fast, you know.
I forget the brown shoe folks.
Exactly. And
That's
ours are
in-house.
louder and we go slower.
Oh, yeah.
So I did win the FMF PAC Flight Surgeon of the Year that
Okay,
year,
but
so.
you did make it.
I did, right.
Yeah.
And so that was just an honor to be nominated.
Hey,
for
sure.
that. Sure.
But every one of those little things count, plus they add to your ability.
Right.
So you know, okay, I can do this, I can do that.
It's nice to be recognized.
Oh, yeah.
It is nice that people notice that it was a struggle, and even from afar, when you didn't know that people were recognizing that you were going through a struggle.
That's
after
the best
fact,
part.
Right. After the fact, people said, hey, we saw this going on, we knew this was going on, and we think that it was handled
Yeah,
well.
here's how we handled it, right. So the waves weren't 10 foot up and down. You
Right.
were able to smooth them right out.
Right.
And good. That's great.
Right.
Now, when you got, well, you're discharged now, but you said we may go back, but in your civilian activities, have you joined any military outfits, something like that, VFW, the DAB, what have you?
Yes, I'm in the VFW in Lennox.
Okay.
Conklin
That's the new
Coakley.
group.
Yes, that's right, the new group in Lennox, established by, reestablished, really led by Sean
Yep.
Ward. And I am the adjutant in that. It's been, I think, a year and a half that we've been reestablished. And we've been very active. We have
yeah.
a scholarship fund established. I'm selling poppies on Saturday morning at the Price Chopper. If anybody wants to come and
Anybody
buy
wants
some
to buy?
poppies from me.
We had a good deal, at
That's
least
right.
$10 a poppy.
Exactly. And, you know, marching the parade with the other veterans.
I know. Well, okay, this is me. We're in the same outfit, but when they were asking for people who wanted to march, I said, sure, I'll take a whack at it. And then after a while, one of the guys came back and said, even though it's downhill, would you rather ride? So I don't know whether that's good or bad, but by God, I'm going to be.
Are you going to march or ride?
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Sure, I'd rather march because it's downhill, no
Yeah.
problem. Uphill, count me out.
Exactly.
That's my problem. But what's your current take right now? I'm looking, if you will, with all the things that you've done, has this been a positive or negative impact on your life and your livelihood?
I think it's
what you
positive.
really
There's
feel.
really nothing that's negative about it. There are setbacks, and but I owe everything, you know, to the Navy, really, and you know, really ultimately to my uncle for steering me in that direction.
Okay,
to
there
look at
has to
this
be a
school.
primal cause
You know,
somewhere.
he is sure. In my father's career, I don't think that the military would have been a possibility in my mind if my father had not served. Now, my mother's father was a chief warrant officer in the Marines. My mother's uncle was a captain in the Navy. My mother's other brother was a retired Marine Corps colonel. So there is a lot of Navy in the family.
of brass
A lot
in
of
it,
Navy
too.
and Marine, right. And so like I said, I have no regrets. And I'm considering, you know, re-upping just to kind of finish my obligation and to help serve.
Yeah.
So,
Plus, you're finishing, but also you're contributing.
right.
You're giving back, if you will. It's not corny, but it's true. Every one of us, no matter what you get, you've got to give some back. You can't take it all with you.
There are worse things to do than serving your country, and that's what I tell young people. There are several residents at the hospital considering signing up for the reserves. And the financial things are nice, and there's loan forgiveness and all of those other things, but you're also serving your country.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Yeah,
You know, I think
it's
people
damn good.
sometimes feel like it's not okay. You know,
well,
and
you're going to
admit it in
find there's
public.
always an anti to whatever you propose.
Right.
And you know, the bit about marriage is good and bad. Someday it's going to get better, but
Right.
you go with what you've got. Now, to that point, when you're talking, do you do any sort of unconscious recruiting? As you just said, you might suggest to people. But what's your way down, if it's a good way to put it, recommendation to people who may be on the cusp? Is there something that you would strongly recommend, or do they have to feel for themselves?
I think they
Weigh all
do
the
have to
alternatives.
feel that it's a possibility, but you know, it's interesting. I even, I'm a little bit of a military pusher. You know, I'm a pusher, and I think that young smart people today. My daughter is a senior in high school. She goes to Lenox High, and I have two other daughters in middle school, and they're all very smart and very bright. It's not on their horizon at all. There's nobody in that environment who says to them, you know, you're really bright. You know, they maybe could use you in a Navy nuclear program. Or maybe you ought to consider going into military intelligence. Or maybe you ought to consider, there's nobody in their environment right now suggesting these things. Because I think I think that the establishment feels that intelligent people should not join the military.
Why?
You know, I'm not sure, but do you know what I mean? So they're saying, you know, go to this liberal arts college, you know, take this SAT, you do this summer course, do these other things. But there's nobody out there saying, consider the military, because you can go places. You know?
Absolutely.
You can accomplish things. And that's unfortunate, I think.
I think one of the things I've talked to some of the younger kids, when we talk at the payback, you know, gee, I don't want to commit to something like that because I may have had another opportunity that I didn't see that I might have liked. I think, in my old wisdom, once you've decided a pathway, you know, like Yogi Berra, when you get to the why, take it. But when you take that, whichever way you go,
Right.
forget, you can't play what if, but do the best you can with what you have. And then, as you said, the best part is to plan ahead.
Right.
Now, I've had several good interviews with fellows, and they say, you know, I was there long enough to recognize that once I knew what I wanted, maybe it's 2 or 3 years out, but start prepping for that right now. When it came time to make that choice, the guy that was setting up my program said, okay, we'll give you your shot. You look like you're ready to go,
Right.
to develop you.
It's a network.
Yeah.
And there were things that I accomplished that had I not been in the military, I may not have had the opportunity to do.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it. It's you're networking and you're planning, and I think that you know, and I'm sure that you know people who have gotten out and who have said, I probably didn't play the game as well as I could have.
Oh,
I probably didn't
hindsight's-
accomplish as much as I could
Yeah.
have.
Or if I only known then what I think I know now.
Right, right. So
That's life.
we got out. My timing was very good, or bad. I considered staying in. I was on terminal leave on 9/11, and you understand terminal leave. I had 30 days of terminal leave built up. We had our house in Lenox. My children were in school, and I was on terminal leave. My separation date was the 1st of October. And the last thing, you know, I had a job when the planes hit the towers. I was doing surgery at Berkshire Medical Center, but still on active duty.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
On loan.
If you will. And on the 11th of October, they stopped letting people out. And my separation date was the 1st of October. So I made it out by 10 days, which was good for me. It was good for me, and it was good for my family, because the deployment schedule became rather rigorous.
Oh, yeah, it's a hell of a strain.
It is.
You're not the only one in the service.
Right. And we had done our time. And that's kind of the way that we felt. We were laying low. I was receiving emails from friends that, you know, they're going to call you
where
back.
are you?
They're
Where
talking
are
about
you?
you, you know. And I was fortunate that they never made that phone call.
Yeah, my details got you next on the list.
Exactly. But I had friends in my situation on terminal leave who were called back in. Said, you
Okay.
know, you have to come back.
Oh, yeah.
So, lucky. But and then, on the other hand, all military people, I think, realize that, you know, when these things happen, that's what you train for.
Yeah,
so a
that's
little bit of you just kind of long or
Yeah.
pine a little bit for that.
Well,
You know, you
that's
train for conflict and you train for service, and when it comes, you want to be there.
Yeah.
You want to go. I volunteered to leave flight school and to go serve with the Marines, and they said,
Gotta-
we want you.
What are you
Just
missing?
take it easy.
lad? Yeah,
Right,
slow down.
exactly. But a lot of us did. We just felt like this is it. We need to, especially coming out of the Uniformed Services University, where we learned a lot of battlefield medicine. We really felt that we could be of use.
Sure.
So,
And you got to bring everything you can to bear with it.
right.
It's the best way to go.
Right.
Well, all in all, you haven't, in my book, filled in a lot of the blanks because you've been hopping and skipping, but it's been a progression of accomplishment.
Right.
And all I can do is say, thank you, my boy.
Thank you.
It's
Thanks
short
for
and
having me,
sweet,
Bob.
and maybe we'll do a second show sometime.
Okay.
Okay?
All right.
And make sure that you get a copy of it so everything is fine.
Okay. I'll bring some pictures.
Okay. All right. Folks, we thank you. This is a wrap-up, as they say. But for those of you who may want to take a shot, if you will, at joining any of the branches, think about it seriously. We're not a recruiting station here, but if you've seen from the Kevin and all the other guys and gals, there's a lot that you can do, there's a lot that you can gain, and a lot that you can contribute to make your wife and your life happy. So give us a shot. To you fellas and gals who have served before, we'd like you, if you will, to come and do an interview here. The funny thing, now this is true, believe it or not, a lot of the guys and gals who said, so when I first was asked by you, I said, that guy's out of his bush. But in time, they've said, okay, we'll give it a shot. But then the best part, when the show was over, and they say, when you cut the mics, they say, I feel better. I've had that in back a long time, a lot of memories I didn't want to talk about. This is a chance, if you will, without being gory, to relive those memories, but more important, to share with your friends, your family, and the people around you. Again, come and see us. You know where we are. Bob Stevens saying thank you, keep well, keep healthy. Goodbye.